If you've ever read Lord of the Flies, you know it's about a group of boys that get stranded on a deserted island, having to make horrific decisions just to stay alive. In the 1960s, this really happened. What if I told you that the real Lord of the Flies didn't end in chaos and violence, but in a miraculous story of survival, friendship, and resilience? In 1965, 6 teenage boys from Tonga stole a boat for what they thought would be a quick adventure. Instead, they found themselves stranded on a deserted island for over a year. No food, no water, no hope for rescue. But instead of turning on each other, they worked together. They built a society. They survived. And today, I'm going to tell you their unbelievable story. It all started with 6 boys: Sion, Stefan, Kolo, David, Luke, and Mano. They were bored with life at their strict Catholic boarding school in Tonga's capital, Nuku'alofa. They wanted adventure, freedom, so one night they stole a small fishing boat, thinking they could sail to Fiji, over 500 miles away. But they had no map, no compass, and no real supplies. At first they laughed and dreamed about their adventure. Then the ocean turned against them. A massive storm rolled in. The wind howled. Waves slammed against their tiny boat, ripping the sails to shreds. For 8 days they drifted. No food, no fresh water. They survived by catching fish with their bare hands and drinking rainwater they collected in coconut shells. Then, on the horizon, they saw land. They had no idea that they were about to become stranded on that island for the next 15 months. A deserted island with a dark history. The island was called Ata, a place once inhabited by Tongans until European slavers kidnapped the entire population in the 1860s. After that, the island was abandoned and left to nature. And now, these 6 boys were alone on it. Their first challenge: water. They searched for hours, climbing through thick jungle, their throats dry and burning. Just when they were about to give up, Kolo spotted a tiny trickle of fresh water running down a cliff. It wasn't much, but it would keep them alive. Next challenge: food. They started with raw fish, coconuts, and seabird eggs, but they knew they needed more to survive. So they got creative. They built fishing traps out of sticks and vines. They caught seabirds by hand and cooked them over a fire. They found wild taro bananas and papayas, and even started planting more. Then they discovered something unexpected: a shipwreck on the shore. Instead of seeing rusted metal and broken wood, they saw opportunity. They sharpened metal scraps into knives for hunting. They built shelter using salvaged wood and palm trees. They created a rainwater collection system, making sure they had drinking water even in dry weeks. These weren't just kids trying to survive. They were building a civilization. Disaster strikes. But survival wasn't easy. One day, Stefan was climbing a cliff to grab seabird eggs when he slipped and fell. The sickening sound of bone breaking filled the air. His leg was shattered. For most people stranded on an island, this would have been a death sentence. But these boys, they refused to give up. They set his leg with sticks and vines, creating a splint. They made sure he stayed clean and fed, and miraculously, his leg healed perfectly. But nature wasn't done testing them. Tropical storms flooded their camp, forcing them to build elevated shelters. Cold nights made them shiver, so they collected bird feathers and made blankets. The sun was relentless, so they built shaded communal areas to work under. Though every hardship they adapted, but the biggest challenge? Loneliness. They had no way of knowing if they'd ever be rescued. Days blurred into months. So, instead of sinking into despair, they made a decision. They would turn the island into their home, their mini-society. Instead of fighting, they created rules. Every day, they took turns hunting, fishing, gathering firewood. If an argument broke out, they had a system, a timeout. They'd separate, cool down, and then talk it out. Every morning, they started with a song and a prayer to keep up their spirits. They even built a small gym, using coconut shells filled with sand as weights. At night, they sang songs to remind themselves of home. This wasn't just survival, this was community. Then, one fateful day, it all changed. A lone fishing boat appeared on the horizon. Aboard, Peter Warner, an Australian sea captain. As he passed the island, he saw something strange: smoke rising from the jungle. He knew Ada was supposed to be deserted. But then, out of the trees, he saw 6 boys sprinting towards him from the shore, waving their arms like madmen. When he finally reached them, they told him their story. And he couldn't believe it. These boys had been missing for 15 months. Their families had already held funerals, believing they were dead. But here they were, strong, healthy, and more organized than most small towns. He radioed for help, and soon the boys were on their way home. But what happened next, no one saw coming. After surviving 15 months on a deserted island, the first thing that happened when the boys got home, they were arrested. Why? Because they had stolen the boat they originally escaped on. The owner wanted justice, but then their story hit the media. The world was amazed, not just at how they survived, but how they did it together. The charges were dropped, and Peter Warner even offered them jobs on his fishing boat. Their nightmare was finally over. The legacy of the Tongan castaways. Unlike Lord of the Flies, where stranded boys turned to violence, these real-life boys proved the opposite. They didn't just survive, they worked together, built a society, and thrived. For years, their story was forgotten until 2020, when journalist Rutger Bregman wrote about it in his book, Humankind. It became a powerful reminder that even in the worst situations, human nature isn't just about survival. It's about cooperation. So next time you hear a survival story, remember these 6 boys, because they didn't just live through an impossible situation. They proved what humans are truly capable of when they work together. If you've made it this far into the video, I want to thank you for watching and suggest subscribing for future stories. I will be specializing more in true crime, as that's a pretty popular genre these days, and this is something I love doing, so I'm trying to build and tell stories the best way possible. I'm even hoping to maybe collaborate with someone out there watching right now to make better stories. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.